Emily's confirming that we're live on Facebook and YouTube, probably within the next minute and 30 seconds. We're live on YouTube and Facebook.
Hi, Barry.
Welcome everybody. People are dropping in to this Tuning Fork 48, episode 48, with the collaborators and those of us who are still thriving in the 21st century from the 70s. So welcome Peter and Alan, Peter Kramer. All you guys can say hello. Becky Howland.
Hey, Becky.
Sue Strand, Victoria Vesna is out there in Los Angeles. Barry Binderman, California.
So many people.
We're recording live onto the iCloud, so people who want to watch this later, if they can't stay through the whole show today until 6 o'clock Eastern Daylight, it'll be recorded on YouTube and Facebook and on the archives of the Institute for Cultural Activism International. Yeah. So, yeah. Welcome. I think we're going to officially start in a minute or two, but maybe I should start off by saying how grateful and honored Emily Harris and I are to be able to host the exceptional talent and fortitude represented by the people who've been maintaining this kind of a multi-generational or multi-decade event, ABC No Rio, which began, I guess we kind of began on January 1st, 1980, if I'm not mistaken, and have an article in this paper, the Soho News, from that time. There's a photograph there from January 1st when we broke in to the building, Alan. And there's Joseph Boyes, by the way, a friend of ours who we invited with Ron Feldman. And this article is written by Gerald Maserati.
Oh, I'd like to get a copy of that.
Okay, I'm sorry I didn't have it at the Fuentes show.
Yeah.
But there it is.
Thank you.
There's Peter Fend and Peter Cudella, Christoph Kahlhofer.
Oh.
Kahlhofer, yeah, man. Is he in Frankfurt still?
I think he's in Munich now.
Munich? Is he staying with his aunt?
No, she died.
Oh, she died. I'm sorry. Yep. Well, anyway, folks, there is this extraordinary, I don't know, opus crescendo, whatever you want to call it, revival, it has been said. Alan, you want to lead us a little through
well, the ABC No Rio 45 years is kind of a long-term project, which is now installed in the Emily Harvey Foundation in Soho on Broadway through the 26th of April. If you have a chance to see it, the website, abcnorio45.org, lists the opening hours and the different events. There's a few events remaining. And we started working on this in the summer of last year, constructing a timeline of ABC No Rio. Marco Lanier worked to do that, and we have it. It's like 125 pages of all the events that he could find in archives. Of course, there's a great many others. We made an open call for mail art for people to send in their own reminiscences. Mary Campbell coordinated that, and it worked out that a flood of stuff came in, and it's on a little cart rolling around the installation. You could see a lot of it. So basically, it's the whole show in a relatively small, ample space, but relatively small gallery of the Emily Harvey is constructed around this timeline idea. One wall is given over to the first few years, And the next several years that were run by different cohorts of organizers. The wall in the back is given over to the period when ABC No Rio was, in fact, a squatted space, heavily resistant against the city, which had tried for years to evict it. And then finally, a massive painted sculpture by Seth Bachman notes the point at which the city finally gave up and gave ABC No Rio the building on condition that they raise the money to renovate it. And then began a long march through the institution, 25 years under the leadership of Stephen Englander, which is represented on the Uptown Wall, to raise that money.
Alan, I'm so sorry to disrupt, but are we looking at the Emily Harvey installation, Emily Harvey Foundation installation on Jack Waters' monitor?
Yes,
Is that correct?
correct.
And maybe, Peter, if you want to run any screen sharing while Alan takes us through this kind of, narration, up to you, but please be welcome to screen share. Alan, if you don't mind reviewing a second, how did it occur that building was chosen on Delancey Street? Why was that selected as the place to occupy in 1980?
Oh, well, it was ideal. It was city owned. It had a massive ground floor display windows, and it was right upstairs from a subway exit. So there was constant traffic. And artists don't really get those kind of spaces to exhibit their stuff, unless they're selling multi-million-dollar objects. So we wanted to make a show about real estate and the issues that artists were facing and people were facing as residents in the Lower East Side. So we occupied the building and put up the show.
Well, Alan, I know that in your lifetime, you've
To make
been
a show about real estate and the issues that artists were facing and people were facing as residents in the Lower East Side. So we occupied the building and put up the show.
Well, Alan, I know that in your lifetime, you've been
Real estate.
Sorry,
Good
Wow, we're getting a strange echo
Yeah.
of time. Time and space continuum is
Bending.
sorry, guys, that was a little glitch here. I'm using Emily's PC and I'm not used to it. Are we back on track?
it seems so.
Okay. I was trying to ask Alan because I know, Alan, you've had a very rich experience of looking at Occupy around the world, and at that time in the 70s, was this a thing that people were doing, sort of globally? I know in Amsterdam, they did it, they called it cracking, and in Frankfurt, my friends were doing it also in the 70s. So you may give a little maybe context about this was sort of a practice.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That was pretty blacked out. The squatting movement globally in Western Europe was blacked out in U.S. media. I don't remember seeing anything that wasn't about a riot, of an exchange of violent resistance with the police. So yeah, no, there were social centers, occupations. The movement began in Italy in the 70s. I actually later I moved to Europe. I live in Madrid, and wrote a book about this occupation culture, art and squatting in the city from below. And we also made an anthology of voices from the European squatting movement called Making Room, Cultural Production in Occupied Spaces in 2015. And but I didn't know about that in 1980. I don't think anybody knew about that except Peter Munich, who was
Okay.
from Germany, from Düsseldorf. Now he's been teaching in Cologne for most of his career. he knew about that. And Chris Kohlhofer was also a German artist in our group of collab. He knew about that. So yeah, it's natural. Let's do it.
Um, okay, now just to get the chronology right, on the 1st of January, 1980, the building had been locked. Was there already an exhibition in the building on the day that we broke in?
No, it was like an empty building. There was some
Right.
storage, but empty,
So
mainly
I was
empty building.
speaking with Bobby G the other day on the radio about this, and it seemed as though he had that turned around. He had it turned around a little bit. Um, so that's interesting. And by the way, I just want to do a shout out to some people I know. For example, Victoria's in Los Angeles. Margaret Vibmer is in Amsterdam. Hi, Margaret. I'm going to join Victoria in a few days at UCLA, and along with Barry Blinderman in LA. Barry's been an art gallery person, running shows and curating for part of his lifetime. Yeah, Becky, you put work into the exhibition as well, at the building. You want to say a word or two about that? What that experience was like?
Which building?
Well, into the first show, was that
The real
octopus?
estate show? The
Was it
real
the
estate-
octopus that you made?
You're talking about the real estate show?
Yeah,
Our 3-day show or
Yeah.
1-day show?
yeah,
Well, I made a poster for it,
yeah.
and I made a mural that was on the outside of the building.
Oh, yeah. Oh, great.
Oh, and yes, that's the poster.
1, 2, 3, ABC.
Yeah. Well, so what's your question? The city, we went out to, we didn't actually occupy for very long, 123 Delancey Street.
Yeah. What's
Actually-
extraordinary, it seems like this thing somehow, Becky and Ellen, there was leverage, enough leverage to somehow compel compel New York City to sort of bargain with you.
Well, you and Joseph Boyce and Ron Feldman arrived. That was, I think, on January 8th. The city had already locked up the building and confiscated our work and removed it.
Okay, it was the 8th.
Yeah. Or
That
maybe
makes sense.
they removed some of it. But, we always felt that the arrival of, because, Joseph Boyce was in town for his Guggenheim show. And he was speaking at Cooper Union, and Christoph and Peter Monig went and asked him to come to our show. And he did. He and Ron Feldman and you came to our show. And that seemed like it turned the tide because we got a story in the New York Times.
So it was really leveraging the media narrative that helped to get the momentum going with the city, you're saying?
I think so. Plus, they did have experience they didn't know who we were, but they had experience with dealing with the Nuyorican Poets Cafe. And that's one group that came to mind. So they actually offered us ultimately a space for very low rent, any space but 123 Delancey Street, because they said that was slated for urban renewal, and 2, we'd broken into it. There was no way they were going to ever let us into that space, which is what we want. We just want to do a 2-week show. We had no plans to start a community art center.
Or have a building.
Yeah, forget it.
So it must be pretty exhilarating for all of you to see this happening. I mean, it's like nearly 50 years.
It's crazy. It's just everything's it's just crazy.
there was this decision, Alan, how did it go at ABC No Rio? How did, I mean, suddenly you had this spot on Rivington Street. And the name ABC No Rio, as I understood, was sort of co-opted because was there a lawyer across the street whose sign was falling apart and the remaining letters on the
Yeah.
sign were ABC?
Yes.
And it was like an
Rio.
abogado and
Notario.
notario, right? Oh, God. All right. So is that now we're looking at sort of the first years there?
The city gave us a list of buildings to pick through, to
No
choose.
kidding.
And
Wow.
most of the buildings had, there were icicles in the hallways. They were in really, really bad shape. But 156 Rivington Street, it was functional as a beauty salon. I mean, it was there wasn't a beauty salon there, but there was a front
Yeah.
window and there was a floor and there was a basement that we eventually took over too.
Yeah. You redefine beauty.
And there was a backyard, the courtyard.
Just for everybody watching this video, either here in the Zoom community today at Tuning Fork or Facebook or YouTube, we're looking at images screen shared of the exhibition about ABC No Rio at the Emily Harvey Foundation on Broadway in Soho, New York. Are there any videos there in the Emily Harvey Foundation that people can watch this week that will inform them about the
Yes,
history?
yes, there is. Can you hear me?
Yes, Jack. Thank you.
Yeah, there we have digitized and continue to digitize as many of the videos that were produced by, for, or about ABC No Rio in its 47-year history. And so those are viewable on the screen. You can see this in the playback. There's someone standing by the screen. And those are on continuous view. Sometimes they're on view ambiently, but if anyone requests, we can show them things from the earliest documentation of the real estate show, well through our period of film production we called Naked Eye Cinema, and up to the current day.
Okay.
There's a project called the Exfer Station, the Transfer Collective, which transfers analog media, videotapes, to analog files. And they are doing a pop-up project in the exhibition. I believe there's, yes, one more pop-up on Saturday, April
Thanks,
26th,
Peter.
from
Yeah.
noon to 3, where they will be transferring material from the ABC No Rio video collection, which has just sat there for a long time. It's videotapes, which are elderly, and they're transferring that. So that's an interesting archival project. This whole thing has been full of archivists and archival initiatives, kind of all coming together to.
Can you list them, Alan? Can you sort of elaborate and expand the sort of network of engagement, sponsorship, participation, volunteer work a little bit, just so we get a sense of the scale of engagement in Manhattan right now?
Oh, well, in terms of archives, yeah, no, ABC No Rio has its own institutional archives. It has a massive zine library of 30,000 zines. And during the period in the last almost 10 years after the building was demolished, ABC has been basically functioning in exile as a small office in the Clemente building. So there's also the Transfer Collective, Moving Image Archives coming in, and numerous other archives that Marco Lanier was examining for the timeline purposes.
Particularly the archives of Allied Productions, Inc., Allied Productions was the sponsoring project for ABC, or ABC No Rio was a sponsored project of Allied Productions, which Peter and myself and our colleagues ran. And so in that period, ABC No Rio and Allied Productions were essentially the same thing, because ABC No Rio had not yet gotten its own 501c3, its own nonprofit status. And so during that period, we assimilated over, I guess, 10, 15 archival boxes that represent the period that Peter and I ran ABC No Rio. So those are the boxes that Marco started with for his timeline. And then he additionally accessed the archival records that are held at Clemente, which is ABC No Rio in exile. And so he's put them together, and a lot of the work is correlating them because there's overlap. In some circumstances, there's duplication of records. In other circumstances, there are missing gaps in both. And so this is the goal and the directive at this point is to assimilate, put them both together. So the Allied Productions ABC No Rio collection is one component. The other component are the archives that ABC No Rio houses itself. And then there are, as Alan said, many bits and pieces that are spread out, and that becomes the ongoing goal, putting them together.
Yeah, it might be worthwhile just for me to read the first paragraph from the website, abcnorio45.org. abcnorio45.org. ABC No Rio 45 is an exhibition of the artists and activists who've contributed to ABC No Rio over the decades and built it into an iconic Lower East Side cultural center. They will reassemble to exhibit work in this historical survey, presenting artworks old and new and documents that explore the many facets of ABC from the founding collab years, during which artists of that group and others mounted politically charged theme exhibitions to the movement in the mid-1980s towards experimental performance, film, and queer subjectivity. Ephemera from No Rio's archives will represent the collectivist and political projects of the 1990s, including the print shop, zine library, community darkroom, hardcore matinees, and co-sponsored projects such as Blackout Books, Books Through Bars, and Food Not Bombs. The Museum of Reclaimed Urban Space will contribute materials documenting ABC No Rio's relationship to the squatters movement, which baffled Giuliani's police in the 1990s, and the movement to preserve community gardens.
Well, yeah, a lot of that didn't materialize, but we did have the major painted object by Seth Tobachman that came from Morris, and Bullet Space, which has been a frequent venue for ABC during its exile period for producing exhibitions. They put in a lot of their materials.
Exile meaning that the building came down.
Yeah, the building was destroyed, demolished in 2016. They had a good deal to do the demolition. They would save money. But then construction was delayed for many years because of escalating costs, which they exceeded the budget, and then the interference of a nasty landlord who demanded, anyway, it's a long story, but it was delayed for quite a number of years. And that's what was kind of called the exile period. And then there was the COVID period of almost 2 years where all New York City institutions shut down and ABC continued to do exhibitions online. So yeah, though that's sort of where the archival focus emerged really strongly. The zine library became the principal activity of ABC No Rio on a daily basis, as Stephen and his office struggled to raise money to continue the building project.
Can you talk about Stephen's effort and success?
Yeah, well, he did. He succeeded to do it. He raised $21 million, mostly from the city government, various components of the city government, and quite a lot of private funds. And the fundraising continues. ABC needs money to finish the building. They're going to have a building with 2 floors raw. So, they're continuing to raise money to complete it.
Now, Alan, all of this is happening outside the sort of context and auspices of the art industry. Is that correct?
Yeah, no, it's a cultural facility for the city of New York. So yeah, the New York City has decided through many years that the ABC has proven itself to be a valuable resource in a super gentrified neighborhood. I will point out that when we started ABC No Rio in 1980, we had continuous support from the nonprofit sector of the Lower Manhattan Cultural Council, Franklin Furnace, a number of other what were then called alternative spaces, welcomed ABC No Rio as part of their kind of circuit.
That's so great that you mentioned that. And what about the Department of Cultural Affairs at the time? Gelselder was there for a while. Was there any interactivity with the Department of Cultural Affairs at that point?
Well, Jack and Peter produced an exhibition of 5-year history in what was then the New York Cultural Center, the DCA, Department of Cultural Affairs office. So they probably could speak to that better than me.
If it's sort of relevant, maybe you guys want to just talk about that for a minute.
Sure, Peter, do you want to take that?
Yeah, well, what it was it was actually a combination of a benefit. Holly Block had moved to New York, and she hooked us up with an auctioneer, and we had probably 20 artists from Walter Robinson to Jenny Holzer to Keith Haring that donated work, and that had its own wall. And then surrounding that, at the the old Huntington Hartford building there at Columbus Circle, we installed I guess probably at least 100 other artists that were involved. There were performances, there were films. That was, I think, the year that Bess Meyerson, I think, was the director
That's right.
of
Yeah,
Cultural
yeah,
Affairs at the time.
right.
Yeah, so it was, quite successful in that. It drew attention to the fact that the space existed and seemed to be flourishing. You're actually seeing some photographs now in the screen share of the old building. And this is Leslie and Gordon at the front door. And there's Carl George, who was really instrumental in bringing us to ABC No Rio with the 7 Days of Creation show in 1983. So you can see some of this space. I don't know if you were ever at that gallery, but it was very kind of wide and narrow, and had all these little porthole windows that looked onto Columbus Circle. Which
Peter, I'm running video right now of the first 5 years. Are you also sharing screen?
I am sharing screen. I don't know how that works if you can both share screen.
No,
We're
we're
learning.
looking at City Gallery, the first 5 years.
Okay.
Well, the DCA continued to be a steady source of support for ABC. Once it was, I don't want to say legalized, but once the city ceded the building to the organizers, the DCA and the New York State Council continued to provide steady support for programs there. throughout the period of raising the money, which was basically the 21st century.
What do you all feel is the potential of this, let's say, historic moment, but also this is sort of a moment that has some capacity to become something else? What is the potential here that you guys, if you all have spoken about that, or maybe you need to catch your breath after a while and then regroup to discuss these matters, but what do you see this could become or lead to? Not to mention, of course, the let's say scholastic or educational value of the methodology
I
of
think, John,
community building and
John,
yeah.
for some reason, I don't know what it is, but ABC No Rio has survived. You know, Collab did not want the responsibility of a physical space. So Collab rejected having any kind of really substantial involvement.
Well, managerial, whatever it was.
Yeah, they didn't want that. And then and I didn't either, actually, after a while. But luckily, you know, Jack and Peter got involved with it.
Yeah,
You
Bobby
know,
didn't want it either.
Bobby didn't, but he lived there for a while. And then I don't really know, because there are people who just sort of stepped up at the right time. Matthew Courtney and Lou Asierno and Stephen Englander. And they just, everything, you know, even if there were complications, they got worked out. And then Stephen Englander really was the longest running person who was the director there. And but he had, you know, he died in December. But he developed this friendship with Gavin Marcus. And so that it worked out that there's a wonderful new director for the space. And I went to the groundbreaking in July for the new building, and I was amazed. I mean, Stephen asked me to speak for a few minutes, and I was glad. It was the hottest day of the year, and the now who's the director of cultural affairs, this woman Lori Kumbo. She was like, they all love ABC No Rio. She
Suddenly.
there was a marching band. Julie Hare's marching band marched from ABC No Rio to the building on Avenue C, and Lori Kumba was dancing behind the marching band the whole way there, you know. And so it
So
was really
now
amazing.
it's like branding now for New York.
Whatever.
Well, it always has been. The arts have always been a branding. People come to New York for the arts. And you generally think of art tourism as being the major institutions such as the Whitney Museum or the Met. But it's been a long struggle convincing the city of New York that also smaller organizations, and especially smaller organizations that have direct association and contact and reflection of the neighborhoods and the community that is New York, are not only valid, but they are tourist attractions, and they're also revenue generating. So I like to think that the city has finally wised up. I think the city also recognizes that the arts have the capacity to communicate and to influence. And so arts organizations, even tiny ones like ABC No Rio, have the possibility to influence voters. And so I think this is another thing that, you know, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to understand. As gardeners and as the managers of Allied Productions, we know this firsthand, where local politicians like literally court us. And so I think this may be one of the things that has caused the turnaround between the city of New York hating ABC No Rio to now, as Becky says, somehow loving us. I don't get it, but that's my take.
They're also, the New Yorican Poets Cafe has been closed because they have major capital improvements going on. I don't know the specifics, but they're going to reopen. We've been in exile for so long, but all the programs of ABC No Rio have continued, whether they're at the place or not. The
Which
printmaking.
is one of the things that I think we have realized, starting with what Becky was saying about collab, where people, at least our culture, is reluctant or skeptical about being property owners. We've always weighed that with having a space and a place to congregate and to actually form a community. But we've always reconciled that with either traveling projects or associating ourselves with the public school system, somehow like disseminating who we are culturally without being necessarily bound to any single edifice. And so, as you asked in the beginning of this conversation about the other partners, and Alan elaborated on, the Clemente Center, which has been an associate of ABC No Rio's before it was even named Clemente. Back in the day, we knew it as Solidaridad Humana. And Leonard Abrams, the late former director of the East Village Eye, ran a renegade nightclub called Hotel Amazon. And Allied Productions supported the hotel by facilitating their beer and wine license so that they could have a bar. And there was a whole scene that was happening at Clemente decades before it was named Clemente. And we've maintained the relationship from director to director to the point where Clemente, as Alan said, is now hosts ABC No Rio's offices in exile, hosts ABC No Rio's zine collection and their archives in exile. And at the very moment, which we failed to mention, is one of the aspects of ABC No Rio 45 is an exhibition called Historietas, which is translated as little stories, but is also a Spanish idiom that means comic books. And so the comic book artist Carlo Quispe is doing an exhibition called Historietas in relationship to Clemente's major project, which is Historias, which is the history of the Latino community and its effect on the city of New York throughout from the time that New York City became a city. And so this is a companion or an adjunct to the exhibition that's happening at Emily Harvey. And it represents a long-term relationship that relates to the question you're asking about what happens to the building and what happens in the future. Jack Bradish gave a talk 2 nights ago where one of his main points was one of the roles of ABC No Rio will be to understand and galvanize what it is as a community in relationship to its immediate community, but then all of the communities that it has picked up in exile, which is the projects throughout the boroughs. And now with what's happening in the country with the endangerment of immigrants, is this idea of possibly being a sanctuary,
Right.
so that ABC No Rio can also protect a community that is in danger, and make it part of this overarching umbrella that supersedes the notion of real estate, but at the same time has been successful in galvanizing and retaining a home. It hasn't happened yet, but it's going to happen summer 2026.
Let's just talk first about the event coming up in 1 week. Let's see. Hold on. It's on Monday, the 28th at 3 p.m. Alan, can you just tell us where it's going to be?
Yeah, that event is called Uptown Downtown When Boroughs Collide. DEI warriors on the culture front. And it's a strange time, 3 to 6 p.m. on Monday at the Clemente, 107 Suffolk Street, fourth floor. However, that's when everybody can make it. And we're going to examine the history of the relationship between fashion moda, which was an extremely important avant-garde art space in the South Bronx, opened in 1979, its relationship with ABC No Rio, and in the first session with original participants, including Joe Lewis, the co-director, and then we're going to look at the relationship between the South Bronx squatting movement and the squatting movement in Loisaida. In the second part of the session, Lisa Kahane, Jane Dixon, Frank Morales, Betty Sue Hertz, Libertad Guerra, and Amy Starczewski are confirmed participants. So that will be a purely kind of historical event, but also examining important relationships that are normally kind of obscured in the parochialism of New York City.
Do you think it'll be online in case people can't be there?
I really can't speak to that. The technical details have yet to be ironed out. It's possible. It's possible. If there is, the link would be posted to the website.
Alan, how long are you staying in New York for, sort of this program that
I'm leaving it on the 30th.
on the 30th of April?
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to mention that we have about a little less than 20 minutes. So I think it might be wonderful to have some of the other minds here in the community. People want to weigh in or comment or ask questions of the other folks here. Usually our tuning forks are 90 minutes, but we're doing this as a kind of very last minute pop-up. I apologize for that. We've been a little bit challenged managerially here at our institute. But we'd like to do something again in May, looking back at what's been going on. Hopefully people will join us then. Would anyone here like to ask or make a comment? There's Wendy Brower. Hi, Wendy.
Hi. I was going to say, when we were talking about what No Rio gives to the community, capacity building is really an important part of it all. It's all kinds of job skills that people gain there, producing and promoting and putting, collaborating. So organizing skills are not easy to learn in anywhere. And this is has been a wonderful space for that. And so many people have had good impacts on their life, even if this was maybe if it wasn't their only thing. So to me, that was an important aspect of talking about the new building as a skill building space for people. And it's my generation, we had shop in school, we had so many possibilities to build things with our hands. And today, people don't know how to do it. So it comes to hanging a show or organizing what you've done for this exhibit. It's really important that those skills be passed on. So thank you all for all you're doing.
Could we possibly turn off the screen sharing for a while so that we could communicate with the Zoom people? Thank you.
Thank you, Becky. Okay.
Yeah, I was getting really distracted. Sorry. Well, it's a way also for us to, this show, the 45 show, is a great way for us to meet to have all the generations in one place, to meet each other and to learn from each other. It sets up a really good thing. Like this building, this new building is owned by the group. It's not a rental thing anymore. The group owns the building. So it's going to be this permanent toehold in Manhattan for our brand of sanity, which is really fantastic. Who could have ever imagined that? I certainly didn't. I couldn't have. And that is, it's just not one person's effort, it's all. It's
Right.
many people's efforts over time working together. And I find it just so incredulous and amazing. And I just want to, it was hard when Stephen died, and then our dear Walter Robinson died also. His work is featured in the show at the Emily Harvey Foundation.
That flag piece is incredible.
Yes, yes,
As is Anton von Dalen.
yes.
Yeah.
So, all the people so many people have departed. And it's just, I'm glad that there's Julie Harrison.
Hi, Julie. Can you unmute yourself, Julie? Thank you.
Hi, so I just I don't have a very little internet, no internet, and it's just very small phone bar, so I'm not putting my camera on. But I'm just wondering if there's any way this show could be extended in time. It's such a short run. So has anyone entertained that? You probably have, but I just wanted to hear it.
Well, we're remarking on that as we speak because we can't do anything less than a complete view of what it is that we're wanting to express, which is 45 years of ABC No Rio. That's a lot. It's a huge undertaking. But Emily Harvey has very generously donated their space. They had a month to give it to us, which would mean that we had a week to hang it and roughly a week to take it down. So it makes for a very short run. Also, we were asked early on who were the proponents of the show. And Alan has gotten the support of the Solo Foundation, which was Howie Seligman, known as Howie Solo. There's also Allied Productions, Inc., which is us. And we're pretty much maintaining the infrastructure, like everything about the show, because Alan is based in Madrid. And so there's only so much that he can do in terms of really like managing, and probably only so much he wants to do in terms of directing. So it is a group process. In addition to that, we have, of course, the Clemente, which I mentioned, which is hosting the Historietas exhibition. And then there's ABC No Rio itself, which is newly forming, even though, as Becky said, they have done programming throughout their exile. What I'm beginning to understand from not having a lot of direct contact with anyone outside of Stephen Englander is that the group itself, after 8 years, you start to lose like a level of integral connection. And so there are people who haven't seen each other for 8 years. And so the Hardcore Matinee had a reunion, both doing a concert in Brooklyn, not at the gallery, but having a panel where several of the directors were able to reminisce and reiterate like what the development of the Hardcore Matinee has been. So in terms of longevity, I would love that. This was my vision, was that this would be a launch so that people could see what's there and what can be done. Hopefully there will be other venues that will be interested in mounting something like this, that will give the support of their infrastructure, of their staff. Just doing the panels and making sure everyone has a mic, or doing a Zoom for a live audience where the participants are coming from different areas, is a lot of running around. And we're used to multitasking. We're used to like doing multiple things ourselves, but it's exhausting. And so if you know of anyone or you want to start that energy, we have now we know what the material is. We know what the focus is. We know what the perspective can be. So just as shows tour internationally or have different iterations in different venues, I think it would be great. I think it would be great to have a longer duration, and possibly have an exhibition that would explore more extensive content. So
Also,
please spread the word.
there's a 3-day film thing that Jack and Peter are organizing at Anthology Film Archives, sort of, the different decades. And I don't exactly know how the years are going to get broken up. But every time we go back to this material, we learn something new and put it together in a different way.
Yeah.
Some things are really boring and some things are really compelling. We find that out when we look at the video. Some are like, and other parts are fantastic. So, we learn every time we do something like this. So, certainly it could go to other venues, and it could, maybe it's a model for some kind of show for the 50-year anniversary.
Right.
Well, excuse me, but Margaret Bibner from Amsterdam and Victoria Vesna, we're part of the Institute for Cultural Activism, and Emily Harris, my partner and wife. We operate regionally up here as well as internationally. We're in Delaware County, and Robin Winters is not far from us. I'm sure we can organize some, expansion of the exhibition or some part of it or the film series. So we'd love to be help to enable more people to be inspired by this work. And it comes to me a question, and I believe I saw a statement somewhere that ABC No Rio has declared that there's a revival of resistance dynamic. I'd like to talk about that for a few moments. We have about 8 minutes left, and I'm wondering if you all feel that the future is sort of oppositional, or are we aiming toward what has inevitably seemed to happen, Becky and Alan, in terms of having a conversation with infrastructure, with city government, local governments, that there is conversation between perhaps, there's Margaret Bezura coming in. Anyway, I think you see where I'm going. Does the oppositional sort of dynamic still hold up in the 21st century, or is it more about having conversations that lead to transformative change?
I think that's something for another generation to answer. And I think the closest that we have to ABC No Rio's current period is Wendy. So I do know that I asked a similar question with the hardcore matinee, because hardcore was led by Freddie Alva. And one of the things that he mentioned in his review of the hardcore matinee was a period where there were Polish protesters who were inspired by ABC No Rio's protests. One of the actions that they did when they were resisting eviction from the building by chaining themselves to City Hall. So you have these protesters in Poland emulating ABC No Rio and chaining themselves to the embassy, and they had ABC No Rio signs. And so Freddie said it was to the extent where the Polish government had no idea what ABC No Rio was or what it was, but they eventually figured it out, and they were calling the New York City Council to ask for relief. So it was this international activist chain reaction, basically. And so when I asked Freddie what he saw as the future, he said, we are seeing a lot of trans hardcore punks. We're seeing a lot of young people, and we are looking to them to tell us what the future of ABC No Rio's activism will be. Because as we know, the climate has changed. It's become much more harsh and much more punitive. I mean, as we speak, every one of us has the risk of being picked up and taken to El Salvador illegally, and this is being said openly and broadly just
Yeah.
this morning.
Yeah.
So this is
New
what
T-shirt, man. See you in El Salvador. The new T-shirt, right?
Yeah, yeah. So this is what we're looking at. And similarly to when Peter and I and Alan and Becky stopped becoming active in the day-to-day functions, this is when squats were being tear gassed. I was like reaching, I guess, my mid 40s. I am diagnosed with AIDS. And I was like, I can't risk this. Like, this is not a risk I can take. And so the hardcore came in, the squatters came in, they said no. They violated the stipulation that we had set, saying that no one from ABC No Rio would occupy the building. And they did things in a much more direct and, I believe, immediately effective way than we would have done. And irony upon irony, I always say that ABC No Rio is the only avowed group of anarchists that have been in a continual stage of capital development. And I think it sounds funny, but people that I know that work in economics say that this is one of the possible definitions of what is termed late capitalism. So it's not capitalism, it's not Marxism, it's not socialism. There are all kinds of hybrids of culture that are new and that are developing, and that includes the resistance to control, the resistance to fascism. And so this is why we're doing the show, is bringing all these generations together so we can talk to each other, convene. This is what happened during our era. This is what is happening now. And now we're going into the future. Let's see what we can do as a community to put our energies and our experiences and our abilities to the best that we can, and then go forward. I hope that answers your question.
They want to or not.
Yeah.
Something's going to give.
Yeah, I think that's very elegant, Jack, and very generous response. I just want to notice that there's Margaret Bazura. Margaret, where are you coming from? Can you unmute and just say hello from wherever you are? You're
Hello,
muted.
Margaret.
No,
Okay. Hi. I'm joining you from Walton, New York.
Walton.
I'm also in Delaware County. Yeah. Hi.
We're just 2 valleys away.
Yes. More or less. Yeah. Okay. What?
Yeah, hello.
Well, Margaret, since you're on, one of the features, we were asked about the archival video that we're showing at the Emily Harvey Gallery. And one of the things that we have is the panel that you directed called Semiotics, Semantics, with Semiotics, Syntax, and Semantics.
No, it was actually called semiotics. It was semiotics, semantics, syntax, and pragmatics.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the third branch of semiotics is pragmatics. Yeah, good. Glad to hear
Well,
it.
it's on view at the video sidebar at ABC No Rio 45 at Emily Harvey Gallery, among other really amazing and maybe, as Becky said, sometimes boring archival video collections.
Great. Oh, I wanted to let you all know that I recently found the piece of paper that the city had given the group, and it's dated March 1st, 1980. It was what gave the, which I wanted to get to you, but I didn't get a chance to do that. Yeah, it's Robert Parker signed it for Collab, and it gives Collab permission to use the commercial space at 156 Rivington Street.
Wow, I would love to see that. I don't know that document, and I thought I'd seen it all.
Yeah,
do you remember this, Becky and Alan?
Well, yeah, but he quit after 2 weeks. So.
Absolutely. It's an interesting a piece of history, though, I think, because it dates.
I would love to see it.
Right, how it intersects with the whole Rivington School and what happened at No Say No, and gas station.
Much later.
Yeah, much later, but just that he was there, that's incredible.
Yeah, yeah.
Thanks,
I have
Yeah.
a question. I have a question. What are John and Barry, and the others, what are you doing at UCLA tomorrow?
I'm sorry, I'll take over this one, unless Victoria, I'd love Victoria to introduce what's happening, and I can, add to it a little bit if you like, Victoria. Victoria Vesna, at
Can you
UCLA,
turn off the screen sharing again?
screen sharing,
Does
cancel.
it occupy the whole screen or something?
Yes, it dominates the
All
screen.
right, well, that's the example of what the new building will look like.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
It's on the ABC No Rio website.
It's quite a difference.
Yeah, it's very different. It's going to be some
Wow.
cultural shock to move into a new building after being used to a building that was so dilapidated you could basically use the building itself as an artwork. You didn't have to worry about, punching a hammer through the wall and so forth. So maybe there'll be a little distress period with the new building to just,
Okay, let's hear from
warm it up.
Victoria, Jack.
So, yeah, go
Victoria?
ahead, Victoria.
So, John is coming to Los Angeles anyway, and I'm teaching at UCLA honors
Oh.
class. This is honors students, so they're all A+ students. And they're
Right.
very interested in biotechnology and art, and also activism and art, as science and humanities students. And what I do is I mix these guys up and see what happens. And John is going to give a talk. The class is 3 hours long, so it's a mix between lecture and studio. And a lot of times I open it up to the public through Zoom, 1 hour in the class. So that's what we'll do at 6 p.m. Eastern time. We're gonna have John chime in. And a lot of these students never heard of Joseph Beuys. It's like pretty amazing.
It's isn't it 5 Eastern? It begins at 2 LA.
The class starts at 2, but
Oh.
the Zoom lecture, we're going to
Gotcha.
be off Zoom until 3, meaning 6.
You better be there too, Barry.
I'm going to be there at 2.
Oh,
don't wanna
great,
miss it.
wonderful.
I got to meet this character here.
Any-
Wonderful.
And you.
So yeah, no, so then you'll get a whole sense of it. And there's stuff going on at UCLA. We're doing a project on atmosphere of sound, sonic arts in times of climate disruption. So we're very much oriented in looking at that. And so we'll show John around, and you, Barry, too. You're welcome. But I just wanted to say that this is so touching to me, because I was definitely in the neighborhood in the 80s with Crazy Hearts Band, hanging out with Bad Brains and all these wonderful groups that emerged from there, and the artists. And ABC Nero, it was just like, it was just part of the culture. So to see it survive just makes me feel so happy. And that it can be kind of a lineage passed on to the next generation, which is what Becky was talking about. I totally relate to that. I think that's the whole point. And Peter. Peter, you're looking good.
Yeah. So
Break in here. I'd say ditto to Victoria. I lived for several years at both 141 Rivington and 159 Rivington. When I was at 159 Rivington, I could look right into ABC No Rio. And it's funny, remember Manny?
Yes, yes.
Manny every night would be like banging, Mom, open the door.
Oh my God, yes.
And I'm
yes.
screaming back, give the
So
kid
funny.
a key.
Yeah, well,
Doing
it's
something,
becoming an
but-
establishment now with that whole beautiful building, and we'll see where the world goes.
But I applaud your efforts. I certainly saw a lot of shows at ABC No Rio. It wasn't far to go.
Absolutely, it was
And
a place.
that's where I met Walter Robinson. I'm not sure where I met you, Becky, but
I don't either. We
around
just-
that time, it was a wonderful meeting place. These one night shows, just an incredible history, and I'm so happy that you were able to all put it back together. And
Yeah.
oh, hey, Alan, I didn't say hi before.
Well,
yeah.
How long are you in New York,
Well,
Alan?
Alan's leaving on the 30th. Yeah.
Hmm.
I believe on 30th.
I'd be curious to see if there's Zoom links that we could watch your
Yeah,
series.
so John will share it with you because he has
Okay, great.
contact. Yeah.
Becky, I just
Also,
want,
about Rivington Street, I've been reading this book about the painter Bob Thompson.
Oh, yeah.
He had a
Yeah.
studio on Rivington Street, and I'm dying to figure out what number he was. And he had also a painting studio on Clinton Street, which is where Walter used to live. So I had no idea about that history. I don't know how I could find out that, but I just really, he was a wonderful.
so,
And,
so Becky, in a nutshell, what I'm presenting to Victoria's class is I'm calling it leveraging community and media assets,
mhm.
a look in and out. So this is a sort of using my own biography in a way through the mass media sort of reappropriation of mass media that I've been part of and tried to, sort of institutionalize, starting back in 1977 when we took over all the bridges in New York City at rush hour. We had 7 climbers climbing to the top of all the bridges on May 19th, 1977 to replace terrorism with community artwork. And through that, then, I kept doing these media events, and some of you know that Joseph Beuys discovered me through Feldman, and then Joseph and I made the movie at the Guggenheim, and that kind of enabled me to do more performances, like sending cigarette smoke back to cigarette factories, living in a glass house for 10 days, breathing once a minute with plants, having 200,000 people breathe fresh air on the streets from mobile glass boxes with plants. And so this was always designated to engage the media, choicelessly engage the media in a non-confrontational, non-adversarial way through community.
John, every time, I went to that thing you did at the Anthology Film Archives.
Thank you, Becky. Yeah.
I was just in the audience. I was sick. I couldn't be up there on the stage, but I was like laughing to myself so hard because I heard a story which was a riot to me, just about synchronicity, like that you were going to see your shrink. And, that's how you happen to go into Ronald Feldman's gallery uptown. You just would go in and hang out. And that's how you met Ronald Feldman. And then he insisted that you meet Joseph Beuys. You know how these things happen by accident.
Yeah, and I hated Joseph Beuys's work because I thought it was self-involved and self-mythologizing.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize what social sculpture was. But when Ron said, you've got to accept the invitation, and I realized what social sculpture was and that we were doing what Joseph perceived as social sculpture using mass media. So Beuys said bridging was the first social sculpture to use mass media in executing a work of art. And we had such a beautiful friendship. And it's very moving to all of us getting together.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Well, it's very beautiful. And we've gone a little bit over our 6 p.m. I want to be respectful. Alan, you're not feeling well, and I'm sure you're losing energy by the moment. Peter and Jack, Becky, you've contributed so much. Wendy, it's great to meet you. And Margaret from Malden, hello and thanks. Julie Harrison, amazing that you're here. Margaret from Amsterdam and Barry. So thank you all so much. Ingrid, we haven't heard from Ingrid, but there's Ingrid's iPad. And there's this sort of iconic community here in Zoom that was on Sue Strand. Yeah. During
Thanks
the
for
COVID
putting this
pandemic,
on, John. Thanks for putting this on, and thanks everybody for showing up. I missed the beginning, but maybe you have recorded this, and I look forward to seeing the first half that was recorded. So you
absolutely.
guys, I just can't wait to see the show. I've been out of town too, and I'm just so looking forward to seeing the show. And if any of you guys are around on the 27th, 28th,
28th,
29th,
yeah.
I'd love to meet up with you at the show.
We
So
hope
just let
that
me know.
we hope that Emily Harvey Foundation will allow a few more days to squeak out so that other people can see the show. I haven't seen it, but you know,
Well, thanks. I want to
little-
give a shout out to Alan and to Jack and Peter for working so hard on putting this show together. It was just fucking amazing, I think.
It really, it looks, the pictures
Yeah,
look,
kudos
it really
to
shows all the hard work. It really does.
Alan
You guys
for
are amazing.
organizing. So
Of course, this
Tuesday,
film will be
Saturday.
available anytime for anyone's use. It'll be open source. So let's not forget all these resources. I think we need an encyclopedia of resources here. So we'll just keep adding to the list. Have a great Easter Sunday evening,
Yeah,
Passover, everything. Namaste.
thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Goodbye
Thanks,
for now.
everyone.
Thank
Goodbye.
you.
Stay in touch with us if you
John
want.
and Barry. See you soon.
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
have-
See you in a couple
Bye.
days.
Travels,
Look forward.
safe travels.
Oh,
I
bye-bye.
like Westwood.
Yeah. Oh, perfect.
It's like another city from Silver Lake.
I know. So convenient. All right. Take care.
Bye,
Bye, love.
bye, everybody.